All right, how's everybody doing out there? I am Thomas, and welcome to my channel. I do educational videos. We are working on the reciprocal system of theory developed by Dewey B. Larson. I believe this is the 33rd episode, and maybe the 11th episode on his final book called Beyond Space and Time. Now, the reciprocal system of theory is a theory Larson began to develop around 1930 until all the way until his death in 1990. Took him about 20 or more years to arrive at his fundamental postulates, and then he took his postulates and he applied them deductively in order to arrive at a theoretical universe. So it's a theory of everything, and all you have to do is kind of know the postulates, and you can derive your own universe from this. But this is what Larson has come up with, and most of his books are on physical sciences, chemistry, astronomy, physics, and he does have a couple books on economics. But this final book is his foray into the metaphysical and the social sciences, the squishy social sciences, philosophy, and religion, also psychology. There's some biology in here, and probably a few other subjects as well. But we are now, so the basics of the theory, I'm not going to read the postulates. There's two of them. They're both very short. The first one is really the most germane, and that is, in my summary, the universe is not made out of matter, it's not made out of energy, but it is made out of motion, entirely out of motion. And it is in 3 dimensions, or I would say multi-dimensions, or 3 or more dimensions. And it is in discrete units. And it has 2 reciprocal aspects, space and time. Space and time are the same, except they are numerator and denominator of a motion. So, any type of relationship between space and time is motion. And that's what the universe is made out of. Space and time are not a setting of the universe. They are the substance of the universe. We don't do things in space, or we don't do things in time. We actually are space and time. And space and time really don't mean anything separate from each other. They have to be in a relationship with one another. Okay, now, so starting from there, he eventually, in Beyond Space and Time, he arrives at 4 metaphysical postulates that he adds on to that. And we went over that in a few episodes ago. But here we are on chapter 7, which is called the 3rd level. Chapter 6 was about the 2nd level. That was about the life, the addition of life to, in Einstein's universe, the speed of light is the maximum speed of the universe. In Larson's universe, the speed of light is the midpoint or the neutral point of the universe. And half the universe moves faster than the speed of light, half the universe moves slower than the speed of light. We live in the half that moves slower than the speed of light. And that's what we're accustomed to, seeing relationships in 3-dimensional space progressing through time. But if we were on the other side of the whole thing, we would see things in 3-dimensional time, or 3 or more dimensions of time, and we would be progressing through space. But he says, since time and space are reciprocals of each other, what we know about the physical universe, which he calls this the physical universe, or the material sector. We also know about this faster than the speed of light universe, the cosmic universe, or uh, the metaphysical. And so he attempts to apply things to that sector. And he also, but he really says that the life is the result of a material sector unit um, coming under the influence of a control unit from the metaphysical sector. And a metaphysical unit cannot come into the material sector and be stable, only if it is as a part of an already material unit. But now, with chapter 7, he's coming into the third level. So I'm going to just read like the first page here of this chapter because it provides a summary, which is better than the one I just gave you, I guess. With the benefit of the information developed in our consideration of level 2 in the preceding chapter, level 2 as the life, we are now in a position to begin an exploration of the less readily accessible third level. The general situation is the same in both cases. Inanimate matter, level 1, aggregates into increasingly larger units. Atoms become molecules, and molecules become more and more complex until you get all the way to DNA. Okay, so inanimate matter, level 1, aggregates into increasingly larger units under the influence of gravitation and the other forces that operate in this inanimate region. Some of this aggregation has the effect of developing structures that are more complex as well as larger, and at a certain point in the order of complexity, the behavior of each unit changes radically, in some important respects even reversing the previous pattern. This we have interpreted as indicating that the complex level 1 structure formed by the aggregation of matter has entered into a combination with a unit from the cosmic sector of the universe, sector 2, and is now under the control of the latter. Similarly, the biological structures formed by combinations of this nature gradually increase in complexity by evolutionary processes, not by mere aggregation as in inanimate matter. And when this complexity reaches a certain point, we again see a radical change in behavior, as before reversing the previous pattern in some important respects. Since we have already found that there is a third sector of existence as a whole, which is capable of exerting an influence in the local region, we may conclude that the explanation for the observed situation is the same as at the lower discontinuity. That is, a unit from another sector of the universe, in this case sector 3, has entered into a combination with the biological structure and has taken some degree of control over it. In the pages that follow, it will be demonstrated that there is sufficient evidence to provide a definite confirmation of this conclusion. Okay, so he's basically saying the situation is the same. Once inanimate matter has to be get to a certain level of complexity before it can accommodate a even one life unit from the or I'm not sure if that's the right terminology, but a life, an entity, life entity from the cosmic sector. And then once that happens, you have a primitive life unit, such as a virus or, an amoeba or something. You have a primitive unicellular life unit. But then as life develops and becomes more and more complex, at a certain point of complexity of the life unit, then the sector 3 component takes control, and it takes control of the whole life unit and steers it in a different direction. And Larson calls that ethics. So this is an ethical unit, and it creates another revolutionary change in the nature of that life unit. So now that this complex life unit is moving in the direction of ethics, of ethical development. Okay. Now we have to skip forward. I'm gonna go to my notes here now, and see where we can take over here. Sector 3 units, which exercise control over level 3 existence. Okay, so he has sector 3 and level 3, and he has sector 2 and level 2. So something that is in level 3 is merely something that is controlled by sector 3. So sector 3 units which exercise control over level 3 existence will be called control units. Sector 3 is the existence independent of space and time, or beyond space and time. Level 3 is the stage of existence that we actually observe. Okay, so level 3 is what we observe. Sector 3 is what is actually there, the existence of independent of space and time. You may think of this as being that boundary between space and time, between the cosmic sector and the material sector, even though Larson never says that. That's how I've thought of it. Level 3 is a condition in which a living organism is under the control of a unit from sector 3, another type of compound structure. Here the behavior pattern is that of sector 3, a material sector 1 structure controlled at the life level by a cosmic sector 2 influence, and then subject to an overall control by sector 3 influence. And now, so we're really getting into the human realm here. So where he's saying that, the most complex material unit is necessary for the development of life. That's DNA. DNA is the most complex molecule out there, and that is the minimum that is required to accommodate this life unit. And he uses this thing about the interregional ratio to come up with that. In the same way, the most complex life unit is necessary for the development of this ethical unit. He hasn't used the word ethics yet, but he will. And so this ethical unit, we're talking about a human or a humanoid, or something of the level of complexity of humans, that will accommodate this ethical unit. It has to be a certain level of complexity before this ethical unit can take control. And so he says complete domination by the sector 3 control is seldom, if ever, attained. Okay, so this is a process. This is a process of letting the sector 3 control unit begin to take control, so that the life organism is no longer motivated strictly by evolutionary forces, survival in particular. So the life unit, once sector 3 influence starts to take hold, other influences beside evolution and survival take over. Things such as aesthetics or ethics, is what he says. So, but only in the very rare individual, such as, maybe like the mythical, legendary, you know, savants of old, the Buddhas and the Jesuses and these people, only those people have been able to attain like complete domination by sector 3, where the ethical component is making all the decisions, as opposed to the survival. Now, obviously, your ethical decisions can also forward your survival. They can work in harmony. And that's an important thing to maybe strive for, or definitely to be aware of. But in some cases, the ethical considerations are in direct opposition to the survival motivations. So anyway, ethical domination by sector 3 control is seldom, if ever, attained. Identify the level 3 structure with an idealized kind of human, an ethical man. So the boundary is not between man and animal, but between man and ethical man. Because by default, man defaults to the animal when they pursue purely survival interests. So it's not between animal and man, but between man and ethical man. To make progress toward the sector 3 objectives depends not only on the degree of control that is exercised by the sector 3 control unit, but also on his general knowledge and the extent to which his ethical personality has been developed. And so this also then brings in reason and logic and thinking, and that those things need to be kind of on the table before you can really kind of get good at the ethical part of it. You have to have a certain level of general knowledge and the extent to which his ethical personality has been developed. So, degree of so you think of the intellectual, the thinking side of it as being kind of a prerequisite for the ethical. There is a borderline situation in which the human organism may be either in level 2 living or level 3 living under sector 3 control. Just as a virus boundary line, just as a virus, boundary lines in the latter case are clear-cut. The same individual makes very different responses to identical situations at different times. So sector 2 and sector 3 are competing for dominance in many cases. Correspondingly high degree of complexity of the biological structure is necessary for combination with a control unit, nothing short of the most advanced living organism. So humans or humanoids. A structure, and maybe some other complex, perhaps dolphins or whales or whoever. I'm not saying it's only humans. A structure that would be able to reproduce itself when combined with an appropriate cosmic unit, some particular feature had to be developed before a combination with a control unit of sector 3 was possible. The significant development at the highest level of evolution is the emergence of intelligence. And so the emergence of intelligence is this minimum. It's kind of like the DNA. It's the minimum that's required. So the minimum is the end product of evolution. An intelligent individual under sector 3 control, an ethical man, as we have called him, acts effectively toward entirely different ends than survival. Not jeopardizing survival unnecessarily, since survival is desirable from his standpoint too, but subordinating it to other considerations. Although intelligence must exist before before level 3 can be attained, it merely sets the stage and makes control by the sector 3 unit possible. It does not automatically accomplish the change. Okay, now that is about all we have time for here today, and that's a good little chunk. So now we're talking about ethics, intelligence, and ethics as part of the sector 3. So you got sector 1, sector 2, and sector 3. Sector 1 is purely material, atoms, chemicals. Sector 2 is life. And as life becomes more complex, then you get into ethics. All right, we'll see you next time.